Join us every Wednesday for InFocus, a weekly talk show produced by the St. Kitts Nevis Information Service, where we provide exclusives with key persons within the government and discuss pertinent, relevant, and interesting matters that affect us all. Tune in every Wednesday, live on ZIZ Radio and streamed live on Facebook at SKNIS Media and ZIZ Online. InFocus, your government, your business.
I'm Ian Richards, welcoming you to InFocus, a weekly program that takes a closer look at what's happening within and across the government of St. Kitts and Nevis. Well, St. Kitts and Nevis may be a small nation by geography. Of course, we are the smallest independent country in the Western Hemisphere. But its people, our people, have built communities and made lasting contributions in countries across the globe. Through investment, advocacy, and the preservation of our culture and identity, Kittitians and Nevisians abroad continue to make a meaningful contribution to national development. Today, we'll discuss the work of the Regional Integration and Diaspora Unit. They recently hosted the inaugural Diaspora Heritage Emergence Program, and so we'll learn a lot more about that. And it was designed to reconnect young members of the diaspora with their ancestral homeland. Now, we will also explore the support available to nationals who are considering a return home. With us today is Her Excellency Dr. Christine Walwyn. She is the Diaspora Ambassador. Desiree Huggins, Assistant Secretary in the Regional Integration and Diaspora Unit. And Aline Morris, a Senior Clerk also at the Regional Integration and Diaspora Unit, which we call REDU. Stay with us for InFocus for a discussion highlighting one heritage, connecting our global family.
Money is for buying snacks.
Kids have big dreams.
My mom says to save it.
Let's give them the tools to reach them.
I'm going to invest in something called stocks.
1,000 easy dollars for every St. Kitts and Nevis youth citizen. Savings, investments, financial education. Sign up for Aspire at aspire.gov.kn because they deserve to dream smart.
Thanks, Aspire.
Thanks for staying with us, and allow me to welcome for the very first time Ambassador Christine Walwyn, Regional Diaspora. Welcome, Ambassador.
Thanks for having me.
And you brought along with you Desiree Huggins, who of course, and Aline Morris, who of course work in the Regional Integration and Diaspora Unit. Welcome to each and every one of you.
Thank you.
And of course, all of you are first timers, although Des would have participated sometime around last year, around this time, in a conversation series, which is hosted by the Independence Committee. And so it's good to have you back here, Des, as well, too. And so we want to jump into REDU, as I call it. It's the Regional Integration and Diaspora Unit. Can you give us a sense of, for those who may not be aware, what is the role of REDU?
Okay, REDU is an integral part of the Prime Minister's office, and it's the link between, it stands for Regional Integration and Diaspora Unit. It's the link between what happens in the region and the diaspora and the government of St. Kitts and Nevis, or maybe I should say Griffiths. From the Prime Minister's office going abroad to the folks in the diaspora and giving and connection with the regional integration such as CARICOM OECS.
Well, we'll focus a bit more today on the diaspora unit. Of course, that's an important part of the work that you do within the unit, and of course, we have, as I mentioned at the top, persons everywhere. Persons from St. Kitts and Nevis are everywhere. I recently had a conversation with someone, and he told me they were they were traveling with the band to Belgium, and the person was approached by someone who said they're from St. Kitts and Nevis. They've been living overseas for 40 years. She lives in Belgium. We have persons everywhere.
Yes, basically everywhere we go, we can almost find someone from St. Kitts and Nevis.
And it certainly is a proud moment for us when we come across them. Tell us a bit about your role as Diaspora Ambassador for St. Kitts and Nevis. What does that involve?
basically, like I said, it's connecting, communicating and connecting with the folks who live outside of St. Kitts and Nevis and us as the government entity. We do that through different avenues, such as direct communications, where we actually go out and meet the people throughout the region. We do it through our Diaspora Digest. I think is something that we are very proud of, that we every 3 months or so we put together a publication that informs the diaspora of what's going on within and amongst them.
Ms. Huggins, tell us a bit about this digest. What does that entail?
Well, the Diaspora Digest, as we dub it, it's a quarterly newsletter that we publish. And we try to highlight, every quarter we try to highlight an individual in the diaspora that's making significant stride in whatever fields that they may be in, renewable energy, a doctor, anything that we see is significant to St. Kitts and Nevis. We also take that opportunity to highlight projects that are presently ongoing in St. Kitts and Nevis. We have a theme every quarter. So if we have a theme, say sustainable energy, we will highlight the projects that the government are presently undertaking to promote sustainable energy. Also, we take that digest to promote our partners. Redo has a strong base with the corporate world. They assist us greatly in a lot of our undertakings. So in the digest, we are able to put their logos in, their offerings, what it is they're offering to persons in and outside of St. Kitts and Nevis. We also take the opportunity to highlight activities that are going on in the different countries that our diaspora lives in, like in New York. If there's a picnic happening by a certain association, we would post a flyer. If there's a dance, if there's anything of significance that persons in those specific areas want to know about, it's in the digest. We also have a listing of all the diaspora associations from the US to Canada, the Caribbean, the UK. They're all posted there with their contact information. So the digest is virtually a link for all persons in the diaspora to St. Kitts and Nevis. You know, we highlight persons, we highlight the country, we highlight investments. You know, it's a plethora of information.
And it's produced digitally and available
digitally,
online,
yes.
Right? And importantly, that digest is not necessarily just for persons who live in the diaspora, but persons here as well.
Correct, correct. And we've had persons here who actually look at it and they comment and they didn't know certain things were happening with some companies or work that the diaspora has been doing that we highlight also in the digest. So it's a good thing to know what it is, how we are interacting with both local persons and persons in the diaspora.
And so that contact, as you mentioned, Ambassador, there is the face-to-face communication. And I would want to say that that is perhaps the most important one, because that is when you really get a feel and get an opportunity to acknowledge and absorb what is happening, what our people out there is doing within their community, within their space, as we term it as. Tell us a bit about that face-to-face interaction and how that would take place.
Over the past year, we've had a few. For example, I think our last one would have been in Bermuda, where we attended an event in Bermuda, but we took the opportunity to have a diaspora meeting. And I was accompanied at that time by the Deputy Prime Minister, Honorable Candy. And we had about 80 to 100 persons attend this meeting of Haitian and Nevisian descent, living in Bermuda, very large diaspora. And we updated them on the happenings in St. Kitts and Nevis. We took their questions, their concerns, especially about becoming citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis, because 2 or 3 generations ago, that's where we had the movement to Bermuda. And now there's a lot of interest in the descendants wanting to come back and be part of it. Before that, we had a meeting in Canada, in Toronto, Canada, where at that point in time, the featured person was the Prime Minister. And again, this was a very big meeting. some of the same questions and concerns. Of course, when you move from different places, the concerns become different.
Right.
And very successful event.
The Minister of Sustainable Development and also the Minister of Public Infrastructure, that would be Dr. Joyal Clark, Honorable Dr. Joyal Clark and Honorable Conrad Maynard. They would have participated at a recent UN meeting, and in fact, Dr. Clark was sharing some information about that last week. And of course, they did have a town hall as well too, with persons in the diaspora. Is there any linkages to that, or is that something that is done separately? Is there any sort of feedback that is brought back to the unit when these things happen?
Yeah, there's normally linkages. And I must say, in our last Diaspora Digest, we actually featured renewable energy and basically the information that takes part in the Ministry of Sustainable Development and Public Infrastructure. So we actually featured that, and then they went out and gave the information on it. We want to work together and share our information as we go along, and we're very open to doing that, and we do that at times.
How can persons look at this digest? You mentioned it in Huggins before. Where do you find that digest?
The digest can be found at www.diaspora.gov.kn. Yeah, and it's there, it's accessible, and all past Diaspora Digests are also there. And as I said, every quarter we have a specific theme. So information related to that theme is in each of the digests.
Ladies, how would you describe the current state? And I appreciate that you deal with it at different levels. But how would you describe the current state of the digest?
In the UK, there is London, Slough, Birmingham, there are 2, Manchester, Leeds. And we also have one in Lebanon, which is mostly citizens by investment, but they have an organization that they meet on a regular basis, etc.
A credit to them to ensure that they're registered with their country.
Yes, yes, definitely. I'm very supportive of us. For example, in the Diaspora Heritage Emergence Program that we just undertook, the organization in Lebanon was a sponsor of one of the program. Yes.
And can I add to Ambassador Walwyn, when you spoke of the current state of the diaspora, there was at one point that when we realized our reach as it relates to the digest, we had a little technical issue, and some persons and organizations who weren't able to receive the digest, there were lots of calls. We were so surprised to see how many calls we got to say, well, we know that the digest comes out quarterly, the time has passed, I haven't seen it, what happened, you know, and then we were able to explain, well, we had a little technical issue, so we will resend it to you. But it was amazing to see how many persons reached out to the ambassador, reached out to the office to say, well, I did not get my copy of the Diaspora Digest this quarter. So that to us, it showed the unit that, you know, we do have this connection with the diaspora. So we're happy to say that.
Mrs. Morris, you're quiet down there. How did that make you feel as the office, the fact that there are so many persons who are reaching out? It basically says that your work is not going for granted.
And that is true, because we really do a lot. We not only want to satisfy a tick at the end of the year, but we want to ensure that our persons, our citizens and our nationals in the diaspora are well aware, so that when they come to visit, they know what's happening on the ground, and they don't have to wait for family members to be calling and saying, no, something happened. And yes, I know, got the digest, fully updated, yes. You know, and so it is commendable.
And that certainly is important in the age of social media, where everyone seems to be a citizen journalist out there, persons who could use it to spread whatever angle, to spread whatever story that they feel is important to them, not perhaps sometimes recognizing or even caring about the damage that it can cause to the Federation. So it's important to get that information where it's highlighted and coming from a credible source such as REDO.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And just a final question on the association. Do you get a sense of, as we speak about how REDO is engaging with them, how how active these associations are out there. How do they regularly engage persons? You mentioned, of course, that some of it is featured in the digest. I imagine there are some who are more active than others.
Mm-hmm. Yes, naturally, there's some who are more active than others. But what we try to do with the digest also is every time the digest goes out, we feature a different organization in a different country. So you become aware of the association, what they're doing, the organizations, what they're doing, what their interests are, etc. A lot of the association, of course, focusing on getting the people of St. Kitts and Nevis together, but also making a commitment to back home. So we see that there's the St. Kitts and Nevis Association in Toronto, for example. Last year they were focused on getting money to send to the cancer associations here. I think this year they're doing on diabetes. So their gala this year for independence will be focused on raising funds to send to the Diabetic Association here in St. Kitts and Nevis. There's some organizations in New York who's committed directly to sourcing supplies and equipment to different organizations like the Diabetic Association. I know they receive a lot. There's associations in the UK who constantly send directly to the children's home. So they have main focus, and they actually exist to help back home, you know. And so one of the discussions we had with them recently is like, yes, you're giving to us back home, but let us help you with the descendants. Because in order to keep the association alive, you have to have the associations getting involved. And hence the reason for the program that we just did. Right. Because we brought these young folks here, taught them about St. Kitts and Nevis in all different forms. And from governance to culture, you name it.
Well, let me stop you there, Ambassador, because I don't want you to get ahead of our discussion. That is something that we actually are going to talk about next. And so it's about this time for us to take our first break. Okay. So we're going to do that, and then we can jump into that. And for persons who are looking at us on television or on social media, during our break, they're going to see some videos, video montage of some of the photos that were taken during that engagement that those persons have here. And so we'll discuss that a lot more when we return from our break. Stay with us, viewers and listeners. We'll be right back with more In Focus. Welcome back to In Focus. We are continuing our discussion with Dr. Christine Walwyn, Her Excellency, who is, of course, is the regional ambassador, and she's supported by Desiree Huggins and Aline Morris of the unit, which is the Regional Integration and Diaspora Unit, which, of course, we call REDO. So, Ambassador, you hinted at it twice before we even prompted. It shows, I think, the vision behind the Diaspora Heritage Emergence Program. It shows that there is a lot of connection, and the aims of that really ties into the work. And it's clearly you're very excited about it, as I mentioned. you mentioned it twice before. So tell us all about that. It's something that was recently hosted by REDO. When was it? What was it?
Just going back, the reason for the program was not necessarily just to bring youth here to St. Kitts, to give them education and enjoyable time. But looking forward, looking in the future for the organization, that's why I keep tying back to the organizations, because the organization exists right now to keep the people of St. Kitts and Nevis together, to send information back home, etc. But we need to understand that when they move on, what happens? Who's going to take up the slack? Is the organization just going to go dormant because there's no one there who remember what St. Kitts and Nevis is like, etc.? So hence the program, we were trying to get some new ambassadors.
Give us a sense of the makeup of those associations. Basically what you're saying, it sounds like there are persons who physically have lived here and they're transitioning out.
Most of the organizations are like that. We find, though, in the UK especially, we have a lot of descendants. As a matter of fact, in Birmingham, there are two organizations. One is the folks who basically moved from St. Kitts and Nevis to Birmingham. So there's a St. Kitts and Nevis organization.
And that would be back in the day, of course.
Exactly.
Many decades ago.
So it's the older organization. And recently there's a new organization which are called as Descendants of St. Kitts and Nevis. Association of Descendants of St. Kitts and Nevis. So they've already gone to the next generation. Folks who were born in the UK, but who have some interests in it. And that is where we now need to encourage, because we've basically come to the end of the migration phase. We have looking at our statistics here.
So you were speaking about the concept of the DHEP. I think we're going to call it that?
Yes, DEP. We call it DEP. Yes. So that basically, we wanted to make sure that we can get descendants interested in St. Kitts and Nevis so that they can carry on the mantle, carry on the organizations, etc. And so we needed to have a strong educational program, etc., so that they can move forward. The DEP program was held July 18th to the 25th, so we just recently completed it. Basically designed to inspire, like I say, youth out on the outside living in diaspora to become ambassadors of St. Kitts and Nevis, to learn more about their heritage, and be able to basically showcase and sell St. Kitts and Nevis abroad. The participants rather, were mostly descendants. They engaged in a week-long program, which I would call a very successful program from, all ends. And we can go into depth about the success of the program, the formation, etc.
Right, but I want to touch on, because you mentioned it just now in terms of the applicants. You mentioned the term youth. What does that mean? Anyone can be a youth. Tell us a bit about who qualified, who were eligible.
Okay, well, we had participants range from age 18, I think it was to 16 to 22. 16 to 22. So we had to tailor a program that's suitable for the young persons, So it was a program that not only had heritage and culture, but some information in terms of governance and structure. Because we found that even though a few of them, some were from heritage in Nevis, some had heritage in St. Kitts, and those that would come home, maybe came home once or twice before, they would come to the airport and go straight over to Nevis. So they didn't have very much knowledge of St. Kitts. Same thing with St. Kitts. Some of the persons who come to St. Kitts, they didn't have much knowledge of Nevis. So the program was very, very successful in that way, in that we were able to expose them to both islands, So they could have an appreciation of the what do I call it? The specialness of each island. They were exposed to the heritage, the culture, the governance. They were able to meet with members of the NIA in Nevis. They were able to meet with persons in St. Kitts and Nevis from the government, the Attorney General, the Speaker of the House, and the Prime Minister had a one-on-one discussion with them. So I find that, the the age range, as we go back to, it was suitable for them, you know.
Was it just age that qualified you to participate in this program? I imagine that there must have been some sort of, as you speak about the connection with the association and ensuring that there is that sustainability, that there must have been some sort of a link between ensuring that you are a part of the association or you came through the association or something like that.
Yes, most applicants, they would have applied through an association and they would have been given the support of the association. One of the features of the program is that the association would have provided funding to get you to St. Kitts and Nevis. That was the support that we asked of each association.
How many persons participated? How many, well, before we even get there, how many persons applied and how many persons were successfully chosen?
30 plus. We had about 30 plus applications, which we reviewed, and at the end of that process, we ended up with 20 persons participating.
What tilted the scales in favor of one person over the other?
Most of it was age. Most of it was availability for the period that we held it. Some persons would have indicated after we would have said yes that they ended up having clashes and so had to decline. But all in all, if it were not for those issues or clashes, we would have had a strong 30 participants.
That was the target number, it
yes.
30 persons.
Yes, so we would have had that.
Okay, and we've touched on it before. Tell us a bit about the experiences. There was mention of governance and engagement with senior members in government. Tell us about the experiences that they had while here.
First off, there was a spiritual experience because we took them to church and a Sunday morning worship, where some of them weren't familiar with. We had
a culture shock for many of you.
Yes. Historical and heritage tours, meetings with the government officials, as you indicated before, leadership and civic education sessions, visits to national institution, community engagement, island tours, and most important, cultural performances. Each person was given a clown suit, and they learned the clown dance after 3 sessions, and was able to perform on Friday evening a full clown dance, right?
Yes.
Which I think was commendable. And most important to the networking opportunities. Right up front, after the second day, you see the guy from England talking to the girl from Texas, you know, that type of stuff. And so networking in between themselves and with us. So we trust that this cohort will, having been the first, will be a model, and that they can connect amongst themselves also, and lean on each other for different reasons, different opportunities.
So you mentioned the young man from England relating to the young lady from Texas. Where did we see persons who were accepted to the program? Where did we see them coming from? And that's for anyone.
Again, based on our statistics and where we live. New York had the most applicants, the most participants. I'm going to do my numbers and see if I come back. So let's start with the UK. There were 2 from the UK. Canada had 2. 4. Bermuda 1. That's 5. Then Georgia has 3. Texas 1. DC, Maryland area had 2, and then the rest would be from New York.
Ireland.
And yes, I'm sorry.
2 from Ireland.
Yes, and then the rest would be from New York.
And the connection with those 2 for Ireland was so strange. When I sat with them, I asked them, I said, Ireland, St. Kitts and Nevis, tell me, explain that to me. And she goes, well, my mom is from Nevis, and my dad is from Nigeria. She moved to London, and she worked for international institution, and she met my dad, and we moved to Ireland. We were both born in Ireland. I was like, could you imagine that? That is so, it's so far-reaching.
Yeah, and the last names.
Yes.
We were confused with the last names because they have African last names, double last names. So first we were like, who are these people? Where are they from? Should we even be speaking with them? But very, very strong Nevisian heritage.
Yes.
Very strong. They know the history of Nevis, yes.
So how did you balance the emergence program between itinerary, which I would say would be more the fun, the tour, the sightseeing aspects of it, versus the curriculum, which would include the sessions with the government ministers or government officials and more or less, I don't necessarily want to say classroom work because it was not a school setting, but of course it's an educational program. How did you balance the difference between the two?
The morning sessions, basically 8 to 10, were what you will describe as the classroom setting. And then we did culture after that, and after that the tours, that type of stuff. And engagement with our national institutions like the cable, National Bank, Bank of Nevis, etc. Yeah.
Tell us a bit about some of the topics that were covered during the sessions, the educational sessions, because you mentioned earlier governance. There was a discussion on governance. In the pictures, we would have seen the Speaker of the House, we would have seen the Attorney General, and I believe that there was some linkages in terms of the Attorney General's office, who he consistently has said, try to clarify to persons, we actually had a special on InFocus on a particular, how descendants or nationals from St. Kitts and Nevis, how persons can qualify to become citizens. That is something that his office is particularly interested in. So tell us a bit about some of the sessions that they had and how they engaged with. I imagine the Prime Minister, that must have been a very interesting discussion.
I would start by telling you that all the government officials ran over time.
Yes.
They were all allocated an hour and took much more time than that. The engagement between the young people and them was heartening, to say the least. We had topics such as constitutional and political governance, the role of the parliament, national identity, citizenship, economic development, entrepreneurship, financial literacy, youth leadership, and diaspora engagement. It was very interesting. I think I would say the politicians came and thought they were going to give a little speech and walk away. And that didn't happen. The youth, they were ready. They were very engaging. They asked some tough questions that most of us are afraid to ask.
Give us an example.
For example, the destiny question was asked directly to the Prime Minister and the Premier. And basically, I remember the young lady said, give me 3
five positives.
5 positives
and 3
that happened to
negatives.
destiny and 3 negatives. And let's see what you're going to come up with. And, it was that type of questioning. And all of them were very appreciative of the folks. Like I said, they end up extending the time and having us running over from one to the next. And in another case, the Premier actually asked for another session with them because he was so impressed with what was being said, etc., and the questions that were asked, and the eye-opening questions, and the hard questions that people are afraid to ask because that's the Premier talking or that's the Prime Minister talking. They were very bold, and they got the answers.
Do you think that was influenced by culture, in the sense that growing up in a different culture, you know, here in St. Kitts and Nevis, we are typically more reserved.
Yes.
Unfortunately, and I say unfortunately, we encourage our children not to necessarily be as expressive, to keep a child's space, as we call it. When certainly there are opportunities for persons to, for children, I should say, to express themselves. They must be willing and encouraged to speak openly about anything and everything, because a parent is there to guide them. Do you think that having that exposure to that culture would have helped to guide that engagement that they had with the Prime Minister, with the Premier and other ministers and government officials?
Definitely, yes. And especially some of the descendants asked about their right to citizenship. You know, why is it because I'm over 18 and I'm second generation, I can't have citizenship? And you sell citizenship. You know, these were like everything. I want to belong here. This is my heritage. I want to be a part of it. I would like to come back here and do, you know, give my contribution to what I have. Not necessarily on a full-time basis, but this is my home, and I would like to come back and be a part of it. And why do you have things in place that can stop me from doing this when my grandparents or my great-grandparents are from here?
I think that most of the presenters were amazed at the wealth of knowledge that they had about what was actually happening in St. Kitts and Nevis. They were up to date. They knew exactly what was happening, so they were able to target the questions about things that are happening now, you know, so, and they gave those questions, and like I said, the Prime Minister himself was like, okay, you know, but I think they welcomed it to know that they could have this type of engagement with persons in that age group. You don't normally find a 16 to a 22-year-old person asking about the Destiny Project, you know, so it was quite impressive, the kind of questions that they brought and the feedback that they gave.
And of course, special economic zones are nothing new in the international circle. There are a number of countries that have them. And so while it is new here to an extent at that level in St. Kitts and Nevis, and so we would understand, of course, there are a number of questions, and it's good that they were able to have that opportunity to ask those questions, as it was afforded also to locals to ask questions as well during various town halls that were held. And Ambassador, just one note I would like to mention in terms of the citizenship aspect of it. You mentioned that we sell citizenship. I think the Prime Minister always is careful to note that what we do is that we afford opportunity for persons to invest.
Yes.
And there's an opportunity to become a citizen if they choose as well too. So just wanted to
I was quoting.
So that's what they said.
Yes.
That's how they viewed it.
Exactly.
And of course, I'm sure they will be able to be guided accordingly in terms of the investment options.
Yes.
That was a direct question, actually, to the Prime Minister about citizenship. What is the ratio, they asked, to persons actually from St. Kitts and Nevis to economic citizens? Yeah, they asked questions of that nature. What was the ratio? And what is he going to do to control that balance? There were discussions of that nature.
And the conversation was not necessarily just on that. They spoke about health and education and, you know, sustainability IT. And
IT, yes.
Yeah, IT, very heavy on IT.
Right. So electronic identification, of course, being in the news recently with the new Prime Minister in the UK, who decided to not move forward with that program, while a country like St. Kitts and Nevis certainly is taking up that mantle and doing it as it tries to integrate more technology into doing business, with making us more efficient. Feedback, because of course we're running out of time for this segment. What was the feedback like from those persons who participated?
The feedback from the participants, overall, it was good. They appreciated the program that was presented. They were happy to have engaged in the activities that were planned for them. They took lots of pictures, and for the sessions that they had to, they asked their question very comfortably. No apologies made. We need to know when we're coming back, this is what is going to be here, this is what we're going to inherit. So they took the opportunity whenever they could to ask of presenters that were in front of them any and every question. From the foods that we ate, breakfast, lunch, dinner, to local delicacies or things, maybe some Kittitians and Divisions take for granted now, like cane and mango and sugar apple.
Yes.
We were able to get some stuff like that for them, and they were like, and they asked for those things, guineas. When are we going to get those? So on the tour, on the Monday, the island tour, we took them to Cooper's for lunch, and when they got to Cooper's at the end of lunch, they had cane. And everybody had cane. We didn't have enough cane for everybody to have cane to take back, and they enjoyed the cane. So it was, as Ambassador said earlier, very heartwarming to know that those were the types of things that they craved for, that they asked, that they appreciated. You know, not junk food or I wanted, but they appreciate. Cook up, they ask for goat water.
Yeah.
When are we going to get, you know? So we really felt wowed that it hit where it was supposed to hit. We didn't miss at all.
Right.
You know, we didn't miss at all, and we had that perfect audience to engage and to stretch us and to challenge us and say, okay, next time we need to go harder this way, you know, because this is what they actually came from.
And what's expected of them now that they have returned to their various lives? What's expected of them coming out of this program?
To keep in touch. Not necessarily with us, but with each other, through the organization, and spread the word of St. Kitts and Nevis. Spread the positive word of St. Kitts and Nevis. And they have first-hand information, which will be able to guide the rest of the folks, that, you know, the naysayers, etc. So we hope that they'll be our communication guide and get the word out for us on a positive level.
And of course, you mentioned that how you use the term successful. You said it was a successful program. Does that suggest that there's going to be a follow-up, that there will be a similar activity held?
We trust that we'll be able to do this again. We're on a 3-year cycle, and if you've been following us, we've done a diaspora breakfast one year around independence, where we gathered all the folks who came in for independence and had diaspora breakfast, and we worked with our partners, some of our partners who are still on board with us, the TDCs, the National Bank, etc., the cable. And then the following year we did the diaspora conference, which was for at the adult level. People from the diaspora come and sit down and present and communicated on the 7 pillars. Yes.
Of the Sustainable Health and State Agenda.
Exactly, yes. And then now we've had the program geared towards the youth. So we would
start over or something new? Start over or something new?
We will look into, for next year actually, we're looking not to have a diaspora program itself, but to partner with ANSAR, which I can tell you more about. We will focus on ANSAR next year, and then we'll start the process over again after that.
Okay. We're just about time for this segment, but I did wanted to get that part, and I'm glad that you mentioned the partners as well too. But I do want to have a discussion on persons who are interested in coming back to St. Kitts and Nevis. Of course, that is something that is very important to the government and very important to your unit, as it has to facilitate that. And of course, you'd have heard some of those expressions as well, to even dealing with the young people. And so we want to have a discussion on that. When we take our break, we'll have some more photos of persons in the Diaspora Heritage Emergence Program. We'll see more of the fun side. You spoke about the cane, I believe there's a shot of that. If you're listening on radio, please go and find a television, go and find a social media stream and take a look at the pictures. We'll be right back with more in focus. back to InFocus. We continue our discussions with officials from the Regional Integration and Diaspora Unit. And we're going to talk a bit now about returning nationals to St. Kitts and Nevis. Persons who wish to come back from living in the diaspora for so many years to settle once again into their homeland. And your department is responsible for that. Tell us a bit about the services that are offered.
We move right to the officer who's in charge of returning nationals, Ms. Morris.
Thank you, Ambassador. I seem to be the governor, Ian, of returning nationals, but I am the link between Diaspora and St. Kitts Nevis when it comes to persons who want to relocate to St. Kitts Nevis after they've lived outside of the Federation for 10 years or more. And so they come on vacation. Mostly it was during Christmas time. Then we started music festival, so they come music festival. Some persons come back for music festival. Christmas. Some persons will come for Culturama. And so I guess as they are aging and saying, I don't want to stay where I am, I want to come back home, some persons come. Some persons come and don't have anywhere to stay. They have to stay with families. And so at the office, I said, we need to start advertising because when they come, they get stuck because they haven't planned enough, as they should, to relocate. Some persons are in a better state where they have built, or there are maybe family homes that they could stay at, but then when you're coming back to stay with husband or with wife, you want your own space, right. You want to bring back your stuff, and so we encourage them to plan early, gauge their time when they would want to come next 3 or 4 years. This is what I have to start doing on St. Kitts. As far as having accounts, not only property, but you have a bank account, so if you need to build or if you need to engage in that housing plan that NHC may have, and just a little something because we're getting old, we don't want any big spaces to clean and stuff. And so those are the types of conversations they would have us have when they come in, tell me or help me to guide me as to what I have to do.
So the services that are offered are more in terms of advisory as opposed to more or less like something like a skipper, which is a one-stop shop to a person's to invest in St. Kitts and Nevis. So they have to move them through the channels. Is that service really more advisory, or is some of that provided as well?
Mostly advisory, and so that's another part of my responsibility as the officer, to ensure that I'm up to date on what happens and what is offered to everybody. There are certain things that just nationals may get. There are certain things that citizens may get. So once it is a national thing, I advise, and when they ask, I could say which office, which ministry. Some persons come, I want to do my own thing. I don't want to work for anybody. I'm still young enough, because it's not everybody coming back who is old or elderly. We have young returning nationals who have done their bit overseas and still want to contribute, are able physically to contribute, but they want to work for themselves as entrepreneurs. It may be that they need to also bring in a boat because it's fishing, or it's a vehicle because it's tourism related. And so I have to say, okay, you go SPDC for this, you go tourism for this, Ministry of Finance can help you here, this is what you, so I have to know basic general stuff to guide them. Specifically, the unit says, visit our website, read upon what you can do, the household and furniture stuff, a vehicle, a personal vehicle is allowed. I guide them. So that.
And on average, can you give us a sense of how many persons reach out to the unit expressing an interest to return to St. Kitts and Nevis, and those that actually do?
a lot of questions via phone call, via family members, on our website, via the email. The website is the Returning Nationals, all lowercase, .gov.kn. That has everything. Some persons don't like to read. It seems inundated too much stuff. Prefer to call. And so they can call. We have a cell phone access. It's 869-662-5269. Or they can email me at rns@gov.kn. And I answer questions back and forth, questions, satisfy them. Yes, this is what I need to do. This is when I can do it. If it's a referral to property stuff or refurbishing a house, I direct them in the way they need to go.
And I'm sure there will be a lot of questions on the tax code as well too. Is that a yes or no?
No.
Really?
Tax?
The tax code, what is expected of them, whether there is a personal income tax, how much is the VAT, how much they would have to contribute to Social Security for those who are going to start a business?
I don't get a lot of those questions. I guess because I'm referring them to either SPDC or so, they would, but it's just generally point me where I could ask more questions, and so they go. Yes.
Okay. I asked about the numbers. Do you have a sense of like how many, let's say last year in particular, how many persons would have moved back to St. Kitts and Nevis as a returning national?
So last year we had, and it's not just returning nationals as returning nationals, we also have returning students, and we have returning migrants or returned migrants. And so for returning nationals, we had last year 44, we had 6 persons who were returning students. And then for this year to date, and as at June, we have 11 who have returned, 1 student, and we have 1 returned migrant for the year.
In terms of the returning nationals, are the numbers trending upward or downward, or do they fluctuate up and down?
Kind of on the same. The year before, 2024, it was almost around the same number. We project like 12 to 20 a year. We always go over, but it's the time. Most of it is either late year, so between August, December, I'm active on my face, and then January a bit, and then it dies down a little. I may get some in the summer, but that time is a bit more active for just questions, because they're planning to come later on in the year, and then I have the students.
Can you give us a sense in terms of then how many persons, when they actually do return, I'm going to stick it to returning nationals, because of course the students say they return to St. Kitts and Nevis, they're going to look for a job. They're still young, they need to provide for themselves and their family. In some cases, some of them have children. But give us a sense of how many returning nationals come in and actually want to contribute, want to give back, to participate in some way, whether it be in terms of economic development, whether it be in terms of social work or community work. Do you have any statistics or any sense of how that is done?
Not confirmed numbers, but some persons who are willing to share would say, I don't want to work, I want to give back. So if there is a school, I can go at afternoons and have homework sessions or community activities where I can possibly help to share with either young women or young men about sewing or cooking or baking, that sort of thing. They are interested in helping in those areas.
And that's important as well, so persons understand that they're coming back to contribute. Either way, they have a right to be here. They're citizens or nationals of St. Kitts and Nevis, and so everyone has a right to be here. But coming back to contribute based on the fact that you've learned your expertise in your areas, sharing that certainly is something that is very important. And speak to us a bit, briefly if you can, about, I believe there's a Returning Nationals Association here. How is the relationship between the REDO and that association?
Well, the Returning Nationals Association for years before, was not very active. The president then would have fallen ill and would not have been able to continue during his term, and so there was a lull. Unofficially, they still met, but they were not organized. And so a couple of years ago, it was reintroduced. We had a whole engaging through the applications that are received via our office. There's a question on it that we ask, are you interested in being part of the association? And for those who said yes, we went back a couple of years and we picked all the yeses and we said, hey, let's meet, let's have a meeting, let's see how many persons are. They came and they organized themselves, they had an election, and so they are now meeting regularly, and we have rebranded, have stretched, because some of them who came said, oh, Miss Morris didn't give me because I wasn't a national. I'm a descendant, and so we want and have been advocating ever since that descendants be part of the Returning Nationals Association, and so that is the new name, that they are the Returning Nationals and Descendants Association. Their president is Miss Beverly Williams, and they have a good relationship with us. We guide them on what they can do, what they're allowed to do in terms of engagement through, and their process for advocating for the descendants actually came via our office to the AG, and so we have had meetings, and they have regular meetings where they would invite persons in, ambassador visits, Pierce Hazel visits, and so we are familiar.
And we were even able to engage them with the DEP program. With the young people that came, we invited them to the events. Their president, Beverly Williams, was able to interact with a number of them on the island tour. So, we're just not leaving it there. They're allowed to interact with these persons, the descendants, the nationals.
It's a success story because based on what Mrs. Morris just said, sustainability, that's why it's important to get those young persons involved. The person fell ill, they became dormant. It's important to have that sustainability, that those young energies, and sometimes not so young, but young energies can come from anyone at any age to continue to operation. Ambassador, we're essentially out of time. I'm going to give you just 30 seconds to talk a bit about ANSA, because you touched on it earlier. And I suppose it's in the upcoming What's Next for radio.
Yes, thanks for the time. The Anguilla Nevis St. Kitts Associations Reunion, that's what ANSA stands for, will be next July, the 9th to the 11th, will be in Nevis. It's a reunion that goes around the world with the organizations of St. Kitts and Nevis. So sometimes it's held in the UK. 2 years ago it was held in Canada. Before it was in Anguilla. Before that it was in New York, that type of stuff. So next year we're fortunate that it's going to be in Nevis, July 9th to the 11th. They're in the beginning of initial stages of getting this stuff together. A flyer just came out 2 days ago, and I'm hoping that next couple of weeks or so, the members of that ANSA committee can be here to inform the nation and the diaspora of the work they're going to be doing for ANSA.
All right, okay, we look forward certainly to learning a lot more about that engagement that is scheduled to take place. Our Regional Ambassador, Her Excellency Dr. Christine Walwyn. We have Desiree Huggins and also Ali Morris. Thank you so much for joining us for this edition of InFocus.
Thank you.
We'd like to thank you, viewers and listeners, for joining us. We trust that you'll join us next week at the same place, at the same time for another edition. Next week, we actually have the return of Dr. Joya Clark, the Honorable Dr. Joya Clark, and her Permanent Secretary, who's going to be sharing a lot more on land issues. There are a lot of discussions, a lot of conversations, a lot of questions that happened about the land, and we'll be happy to facilitate that next week. Until such time, we trust that you'll join us next week. I'm Ian Richards.
Join us every Wednesday for InFocus, a weekly talk show produced by the St. Kitts Nevis Information Service, where we provide exclusives with key persons within the government and discuss pertinent, relevant, and interesting matters that affect us all. Tune in every Wednesday, live on ZIZ Radio and streamed live on Facebook at SKNIS Media and ZIZ Online. InFocus, your government, your business.